Okay, so this is the final module of the semester. It was a long ride, but I hope you enjoyed it. Please go through this final module carefully. There are a few important points to pay attention to before the semester is over, so it's dangerous to ignore this information. I plan to cover some important end-of-semester information, details about the final, and give some final messages and thoughts. There are a few things that you should make absolutely certain that you do before the semester is over. First, check your scores in the gradebook. Hopefully you've been doing this all along. If you have any objections to any scores, it is your duty to let me know this week, preferably before the weekend. After Friday it might be too late, and after grades are in it will definitely be too late. I keep scores posted continuously for a reason and have mentioned in several places, including the letter of agreement, that students should check them. Nobody makes mistakes on purpose, and I assume that I am not naturally better or worse than others in this regard. But instructors can have thousands and thousands of students during their careers. In addition, many times students ask for special favors, turn things in late, send things in through email that should have been turned in other ways, and so forth, which can cause additional confusion. Because of this, things can get messy. So even with the very small percentage of mistakes made by the most careful of instructors, it is worth checking your scores to make sure that they look right. After all, it takes almost no effort to do this, and you probably want to know how you're doing anyway. Again, I emphasize that it is incumbent upon you to bring any objections you may have to me this week, hopefully before the weekend. Next up, I do not plan on letting students take the final late. This is not something that you will likely be able to use the course favor for. Many people have taken late quizzes and tests during the semester by using the course favor, and this is fine. That's what it was for. But you will almost certainly be turned down if you try to take the final late. This is because I have very little time to get these graded and turned in. I simply cannot turn in my own grades past the deadline. So for your own sake, please take the test on time. The system will close the final a day after the deadline. This is so that people who take it close to midnight the day it is due will not get kicked off at 12:01 a.m. the next day. This is the only way that I can prevent the system from knocking people off at midnight. I cannot adjust the hour that a test closes, so I have to set it to close a day later. I will still grade anything that comes in that day so long as the system accepts it. But if you turn it in after it is officially due, then you are absorbing the risk if there is a problem with the school system, your system, or if you get knocked off by your carrier, or if you accidentally quit out of your browser, or if anything else happens. In fact, to be safe, you should really consider taking the final by Thursday. This way, if there are any technical problems, you will have time to contact distance learning for technical help Friday if necessary. If you need technical help that I cannot provide, there isn't much I can do. I cannot simply fail to turn in my grades while you work on computer issues. So it is very much in your best interest to consider it a requirement to take the test by Thursday and definitely by the actual deadline, and not when the system closes the test. If you take it late, please remember that this was a risk that you chose to take. It doesn't mean that I won't try to help, but the odds of my being able to help drop off drastically at that point. Once again, this isn't me being a hard case or a jerk or a harsh disciplinarian. I have a deadline by which I am required to turn in grades. In the middle of the semester I can be more flexible because I don't have to turn in final grades, but in this case I have a hard deadline I myself have to meet, and this comes in conjunction with lots of grading for several courses all at once. A sad or stressed out story from a student would almost certainly make me feel sorry for that student and wish I could help her or him, but in many cases that's all I can do is feel bad. I simply won't be able to do anything to help because of my own deadlines. I simply do not have the power to change school policy. And now for a bit about the final. The final is just like other tests. It is not comprehensive. It only covers the material since the last test. It may be useful to know terms and concepts from earlier in the semester, and some of these concepts may be made use of, but the test is designed to test material since the last test. You should expect both written questions and multiple choice questions on the final. Again, this isn't unusual for tests in this course. Here are some hints for taking and studying for the final. First, I highly suggest that you do not leave any written questions blank. Attempted answers almost always receive some points. Second, Have your notes handy when taking the test. Also have them organized so that you can find what you are looking for easily. One good source for making study notes is the end of module summaries. These usually tell you the most important aspects of a reading set, and they often contain some explanations as well. Combining these together makes for a good study guide, especially when you flesh out the parts that you don't fully understand with a little more detail. Second, the major areas to focus your study time on are arguments, counter-arguments covered against those arguments, and the reasoning of authors. Additionally, try to understand any specialized terms that are used. Remember, education isn't about memorizing facts that you could simply Google. It is about being able to reason with and apply the concepts you learn. This isn't just true of philosophy, it's true for any field. Brute facts are more and more at people's fingertips. A quick search can quickly bring up pages of facts, but even the best search engine cannot comprehend those facts for you or allow you to put them to work. Here is a reminder of how grading works in this course. The details about this were already given in the syllabus, but I will review some key points here. You are graded on a total of 1,000 points during the semester. Anything more than 1,000 points is extra credit. There have been some extra credit points available during the semester to assist you. You should have done all the DQ assignments except for one, which you are allowed to miss for free. You did not need to tell me which one of these you chose to miss. I simply raised your lowest DQ to a 20. I actually put these points into a separate extra credit column with an appropriate name, so don't expect the actual DQ score to change. You will simply see some points in a column labeled free DQ or something along those lines. If anybody did all 15 DQs, this is not worth extra credit, but I do take this into account along with other factors such as significant improvement and quality of posts, including responses, if a student is within a very small number of points to the next grade up. Remember also that score cutoffs are at the number that makes the percent unless I have a definite reason to bump up a score, such as somebody having done all the DQs. So a B starts at 800 points. It does not start at 799 points. Likewise, an A starts at 900 points, not 899 points, and so forth. Additionally, you do not need to email me to ask me to consider you for a bump. If you do, I will not hold it against you, but I promise that it will not help you either. I do not look at the name when I consider who I will bump or not. I consider who may be eligible, then and only then, if it is appropriate, I connect these with names and look at the quality of the student's post and so forth. But once I get that far, I know exactly what I'm looking for in terms of post quality, and so requests aren't going to influence me. If you are borderline and I do bump up your grade, I will email you and let you know as soon as I have made the decision final and submit your grade. So you should know before your final grade report cards come out. On a 1,000-point scale, 900 points and above is an A. 800 and above but less than 900 is a B. 700 and above but less than 800 is a C. 600 and above but less than 700 is a D. And anything below that it's best not to talk about. I mentioned this in the presentation and in the introduction for the course as well, but there's a reason why I cannot just give out a general bump for anybody who is, say, 5 points away. If I gave a bump of 5 points just because a student asked, then in order to be fair, I would have to bump up all students by 5 points. But now think about what would happen. Now another student is likely only 5 points or less away. If I bump up students who were 5 points away just for asking, this student would ask me too, and if I am consistent, I would need to bump this student up. But now once again, to be fair, I would have to give all students another 5 points. This would mean that students who were originally 15 points away from the next higher grade are now only 5 points away, and they will now ask me for a bump, which, if I am consistent, I will need to give to them. They would then be no real principled place to stop. Any line I drew would be arbitrary. If I said that I would bump up everybody 5 points and no more, then that is exactly the same as the original hard percentage line that I wouldn't bump people past. The line is just 5 points lower, but it still means that anybody within 1 point of that line would just be 1 point away and would not get bumped. Also, in essence, I have lowered that line by 15 points or more already because everybody started out with 5 points extra credit for the letter of agreement and 10 points of extra credit for the favor, which they will only use up if they can earn more points by using it. Okay, so that was a bit of a diversion, but I felt that it was important to explain my reasoning. I feel it's often both important and respectful to students to not only make an effort to explain what the policies are, but also why the policies are what they are. I hope that everybody enjoyed this course. More importantly, I hope that I managed to create an environment where everybody felt their views were respected and where they felt free to question anything they wished, whether that be the text, anything I had to say, or anything a fellow student had to say, so long as it was done without personal attacks. It is hard to manage such a large group of students and so many communications when online, but I did my very best to create an environment that would be as encouraging to this sort of free thought as possible. That said, if there's anything I could do to improve this aspect of my class, please let me know. The anonymous forum is still open. You can still log on, make anonymous comments, and tell me anything you would like without the risk of me knowing who you may be. Of course, you are more than welcome to tell me directly as well. I would never hold such a thing against a student, but the anonymous forum is there if you want it. I truly value your feedback. In many courses, I may send out a survey asking for end-of-semester feedback. These are always anonymous as well. If you are sent such a link, I hope that most of you consider taking the survey. I believe that sometimes the school itself might also send out surveys. I do not yet know when or how often they do this. But speaking for myself, I like to know both what I am doing well and what I can do better. I promise you that I read every single comment, often multiple times. In the same vein, I did my very best to give you useful feedback when grading your essays. I sincerely hope that I clearly explained why you received the scores you did. More importantly than that, I hope I expressed to you ways in which you can improve your critical writing abilities and analytical skills for the future. Also, I should note that the course in the semester isn't quite over. If you feel you need last-minute help preparing for the test, I'm available through email, the Raised Hands forum, phone meetings, or even in-person meetings if you live nearby. I am always willing to assist my students in understanding the material. While the majority of you are not planning to be philosophy majors, a course like this can be useful and is well positioned to hone many valuable skills. This is just a very abbreviated list. Philosophy courses develop your analytical reasoning capabilities. They help you both read and write more critically. They train you to critically evaluate arguments. They train you to break complex arguments and concepts down into smaller pieces which can be evaluated. They train you to be very precise with language since, in philosophy, a great deal often rides on the precise way a word or term is used. They improve one's ability to objectively evaluate arguments even if one has a stake in them. This isn't random horn-blowing for my discipline. Here is a chart of composite GRE scores by discipline. The GRE is the Graduate Record Exam. It is like the SAT but used to get into graduate school to earn a master's or PhD. As you can see, philosophy sits right at the top. So even if you don't feel that the particular topics in the philosophy course were of use to you, there's not an ethics section on the GRE, for example, you have been sharpening skills in areas that will be useful to you all this time. These skills are not only useful for graduate school. These skills will help you in any future course where you are required to analyze arguments presented in papers or write papers that express your own reasoning. In other words, almost all college courses. More than that, they will help you in real life. An ability to reason objectively and well pays off 1,000 different ways in business, in one's personal life, and as a citizen. Of course, no single course is going to turn you into an expert in all these things. But if you put effort into this course, you are likely to be better at these things than you were when you started. Philosophical training is almost uniquely suited to exercise all these areas at once, regardless of whether you are learning ethics, metaphysics, epistemology, or focusing on any other branch in the field. But I would also like to add that the actual content of this course may be very useful to you as well. As human beings, ethical issues are a big part of our lives. You may face ethical decisions as part of your job, as part of your life with your family, as part of what you take into consideration when voting, in the way you raise your children, or regarding the purchases you make, and regarding a whole host of other issues. People make choices of ethical importance every day. The goal of this course was not to convince you of any one particular ethical theory or position, or even to convince you that one of the theories we covered is correct. But hopefully this course has shown you the importance of consistency in ethics, the importance of reason in ethics, and the importance of impartiality in ethics. It has hopefully given you an idea that ethical decisions do not sit isolated and alone, but have implications, and in order to try to be consistent, we try to work to develop a theory. This course has given you an idea of what some major ethical theories look like, and how they reason about moral problems, not in order to convince you that any one of them is correct, but to give you exposure to a spectrum of views, and to show you how ethics can be more than mere opinion. Ethical reasoning instead is systematic and seeks to justify a set of principles through reason and evidence. Even if you think many or all of these justifications ultimately fail, this is what they attempt to do. I truly hope that you gained something useful from this course, something that will be more useful to you later than simply ticking off a box on your list of required courses. Philosophy isn't a course that everyone loves, but I hope that some of you loved it, and I hope that for those of you who simply do not like philosophy, that I at least made the course as interesting and as relevant to you as was possible given the material that needed to be covered. I also hope that I will see some of you again in future courses. I truly wish all of you the best, not just in your future college courses, but in the rest of your life's journey.